Dr. Lisa had always been the odd one out in Pine Valley, a sleepy town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Standing barely 5 feet tall with striking purple-tinted eyes that seemed to change color with the weather, she worked at the local weather station predicting storms and sunshine for farmers and families alike. What made Lisa truly different wasn't just her unusual appearance or her uncanny ability to forecast weather weeks ahead of anyone else. The real secret was something no one in Pine Valley could have imagined. Lisa wasn't entirely human. She was actually Princess Zara from a distant planet called Zephyros, located in a galaxy far beyond Earth's solar system. 7 years ago, Lisa had been exiled from her home world. After standing up against her own father, the king, her crime was simple yet unforgivable in royal eyes. She had defended innocent people who were being treated badly by the royal guards. When peaceful protesters asked for better living conditions, her father ordered them to be punished severely. Lisa couldn't stand watching good people suffer, so she spoke out publicly against the king's harsh treatment. For this act of rebellion, she was stripped of her royal title and banished to Earth. The only thing she was allowed to keep were her special abilities, the power to control wind, rain, and storms. These weren't just party tricks. They were real magical powers that had been passed down through generations of her royal bloodline. Now, 7 years later, Lisa had built a quiet, peaceful life among humans. She rented a small apartment above the bakery on Main Street, drove an old blue pickup truck, and spent her days helping local farmers plan their crops based on her weather predictions. Nobody questioned why she was always right about upcoming storms, or why flowers seemed to bloom better in her tiny garden. The morning that changed everything started like any other Tuesday. Lisa was walking home from the weather station after filing her weekly forecast when she heard angry voices coming from behind Murphy's diner. The sound made her stomach tighten. She recognized the tone of Bullies anywhere. Peering around the corner, she saw 3 large men surrounding someone much smaller. The victim was David, a gentle elementary school teacher who lived 2 streets over from Lisa. David was known throughout Pine Valley for his kindness. He volunteered at the animal shelter. On weekends, organized free tutoring sessions for struggling students, and always had a warm smile for everyone he met. "We told you last week, teacher man," growled the biggest of the 3 men. "Every business owner in this town pays us for protection. That includes your little after-school program." David's voice was steady, but Lisa could see his hands shaking slightly. "I already explained this to you. I don't run a business. I help kids with their homework for free. I'm not paying anyone protection money for helping children learn." The second man stepped closer, cracking his knuckles menacingly. "See, that's where you're wrong. We decide what counts as a business around here. And your little teaching sessions? They're cutting into the profits of the tutoring center downtown." Lisa's heart began to race. These weren't just random troublemakers. They were part of an organized group that had been terrorizing Pine Valley's business owners for months. She'd heard whispers about shop owners being forced to pay weekly fees to avoid having their windows broken or their customers scared away. What made her blood boil was seeing David's reaction. Despite being outnumbered and clearly frightened, the teacher stood his ground. "I won't stop helping kids learn," he said firmly, "and I won't pay you a single penny." That's when the biggest man shoved David hard, sending him stumbling backward into the brick wall of the diner. "Wrong answer, teacher boy. Maybe a few bruises will help you think more clearly." As the 3 men closed in on David, something inside Lisa snapped. The same protective fury that had gotten her exiled from her home planet surged through her veins. She'd spent 7 years trying to live quietly, trying not to use her powers, trying to blend in. But watching good people being hurt by bullies was something she simply couldn't tolerate without even thinking about the consequences. Lisa stepped out from behind the corner. The bullies were so focused on David that they didn't notice her at first. She closed her eyes for just a moment, feeling the air currents round the parking lot, sensing the pressure changes in the atmosphere. Then she let her power loose. The wind started gently at first, just a breeze that made the 3 men look round in confusion. Within seconds, it built into something much stronger, papers scattered from a nearby trash can, swirling around the bully's feet. Then came the real surprise. A small tornado, no bigger than a washing machine, appeared right in the center of the parking lot. It spun with incredible precision, picking up dust and debris but somehow avoiding David completely. The three bullies found themselves caught in the whirlwind, their threats turning into yelps of fear as they were spun around like leaves in a storm. "What the heck is happening?" shouted one of them, trying to shield his face from the flying dirt. "It's just wind," yelled another, but his voice was filled with panic. The tornado lasted exactly 30 seconds, long enough to thoroughly terrify the bullies, but not long enough to cause any real damage. When it stopped as suddenly as it had started, the three men found themselves dizzy, dirty, and completely bewildered. They looked around wildly, trying to understand what had just happened. "This place is cursed," the biggest one gasped, stumbling toward their car. "Let's get out of here." Within minutes, they had driven away, leaving behind only scattered papers and one very confused teacher. David stood against the brick wall, staring at the spot where the impossible tornado had appeared and disappeared. That's when his eyes met Lisa's. Across the empty parking lot, for a long moment, neither of them moved. Lisa felt her heart pounding, realizing she had just revealed her secret to save a stranger. David looked at her with a mixture of gratitude, amazement, and something else, recognition. Not recognition of who she was, but recognition of what she had done. Slowly, David pushed himself away from the wall and walked toward her. Lisa expected him to run away screaming or demand explanations she couldn't give. Instead, when he reached her, David smiled, the same warm, genuine smile that had made him beloved by children and adults alike throughout Pine Valley. "Thank you," he said simply. "I don't know how you did that, and honestly, I don't care. You helped someone who needed help, and that's what matters." Lisa felt tears welling up in her unusual purple eyes. After 7 years of hiding, of being careful, of pretending to be something she wasn't, here was a human who seemed to understand the most important thing about her, that she used her power to protect people, not hurt them. "Would you like to get some coffee?" David asked, his voice gentle and kind. "I think we both could use something warm after that excitement." As they walked toward the diner together, Lisa realized that her carefully constructed quiet life was about to become much more complicated. But looking at David's kind face and remembering how he had stood up to those bullies, despite being scared, she thought that maybe, just maybe, some complications were worth it. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would soon put both their lives in terrible danger, or that her past was already reaching across the galaxy to find her. For now, all she knew was that she had found someone who understood that protecting others was worth any risk. The alien princess had just met her future husband, though neither of them knew it yet. Commander Zeth had spent 3 long years searching every corner of the galaxy for the exiled princess. As the son of the king's top military advisor, he'd grown up believing he would someday marry Princess Zera and unite their family's power. Her exile had destroyed those dreams and brought shame to his family name. What had started as love had slowly twisted into something much darker, an obsession that consumed his every waking moment. Seth convinced himself that if he could bring Zera back home, the king would forgive her crimes and restore both their honors. But deep down, he knew the truth was simpler and more painful. He couldn't accept that she had chosen exile over him. A life with him for months. Zeth had been tracking unusual weather patterns on planets throughout the galaxy. Zera's power, signature, was unique. No other Zephyrian could create storms with such precision and control. When his sensors finally detected those familiar energy readings, coming from a small planet called Earth, he knew his search was over. Landing his advanced spacecraft in the dense forest outside Pine Valley, Zeth began his careful surveillance. He watched Lisa's daily routines from afar, noting how she changed during her years of exile. She seemed happier somehow, more relaxed than he remembered. This only made his anger burn brighter. But what truly enraged Zeth was discovering that Zare had formed emotional attachments to humans. Through his monitoring equipment, he watched her interact with David and Rachel, saw the love in her eyes when she looked at them. She'd build a new family while abandoning everything she'd once shared with him. Zeth's plan was cruel but effective. Rather than confronting Lisa directly, he decided to use her greatest weakness against her, her protective nature. He would threaten the human she loved, forcing her to choose between returning home with him or watching her new family suffer. His first step was to make contact with the local criminal organization that had been terrorizing Pine Valley. Using advanced technology, Zeth enhanced their weapons and equipment, making them far more dangerous than simple thugs. He fed them information about their targets and helped them operate with military precision. What the criminals didn't know was that they were being used as pawns in a much larger game. Zeth didn't care about their petty schemes for money and control. He only cared about creating enough chaos to force Lisa into action. The changes started small. Suddenly, the criminal group seemed to know exactly when shop owners would be alone and vulnerable. Their threats became more specific and more frightening. Business owners who had been paying protection money for months found their payments weren't enough anymore. The demands kept growing. David noticed the escalation immediately. His careful documentation of their activities showed a dramatic shift in their behavior. They were no longer just local bullies. They were operating like a trained military unit. When David's files mysteriously disappeared from his locked office one night, he knew something much bigger was happening. The real terror began when Rachel started having nightmares about the shadow man who watched her school from the woods. She would wake up crying, telling Lisa and David about dreams where a tall stranger in dark clothes stood at the edge of the playground, staring at her with glowing eyes. Lisa's weather sense, always finely tuned to atmospheric changes, began detecting strange disturbances around their home. The air pressure would shift unexpectedly, and she could feel energy signatures that definitely didn't belong on Earth. Her alien instinct screamed that danger was approaching, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what kind. The confrontation finally came on a rainy Thursday evening in November. David was walking Rachel home from her piano lesson when they found themselves surrounded by members of the criminal organization. But these weren't the same bumbling bullies Lisa had scared away. Months earlier, they moved with military coordination, carrying weapons that hummed with unfamiliar energy. Their leader, a man David had never seen before, spoke with an accent that didn't match any Earth language. "Dr. Lisa," the man called out, though neither David nor Rachel had mentioned her name, "has 3 days to remember where she truly belongs. If the princess doesn't come home willingly, her human pets will pay the price for her stubbornness." Rachel clung to her father's hand, too frightened to speak. David's mind raced, trying to understand how these criminals knew about Lisa's secret identity and why they were calling her a princess. The strangers vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, leaving only a message written on the school's blackboard in symbols that looked like no earthly language. When Lisa arrived at the school and saw the alien writing, her blood ran cold. The message, written in Zephyrian script, was simple and terrifying. 3 days, beloved princess. Choose wisely. Lisa knew immediately who had found her. Commander. Zeth, the man who had once professed to love her, had become her worst nightmare. He was using David and Rachel as leverage, betting that her love for them would override her commitment to the principles that had gotten her exiled in the first place. As she held her trembling family close that night, Lisa realized that her peaceful life on Earth was over. The past she'd tried so hard to escape had finally caught up with her, and now the people she loved most were in deadly danger because of who she used to be. But Lisa had learned something important during her years on Earth. She'd learned that love could make someone stronger, not weaker. Commander Zeth had made a serious mistake in threatening her family. He was about to discover that the gentle weather lady of Pine Valley was still every inch a princess, and princesses protect their kingdoms no matter the cost. That night, as Rachel slept fitfully between Lisa and David, the family held an emergency meeting in whispered voices. Lisa knew she had to tell them everything about Commander Zeth, about the danger they were all in, and about the impossible choice she was facing. "I could go back with him," Lisa said quietly, tears streaming down her face. "If I surrender myself, he might leave you both alone." David's response was immediate and firm. "Absolutely not. We don't abandon family, Lisa. You taught me that bullies only get stronger when good people do nothing. This Zeth guy is just another bully. He's just from a lot further away." Rachel, who had been pretending to sleep, sat up with the wisdom that only children possess. "Mom, Lisa," she said, using the name that always made Lisa's heart soar. "If he's so strong and scary, why doesn't he just take you? Why does he need those bad guys from town to help him?" Lisa stared at her 8-year-old daughter, realizing that Rachel had just asked the most important question of all. Why was Commander Zeth working through local criminals instead of confronting her directly? If he had superior alien technology and military training, what was stopping him from simply capturing her? The answer came to Lisa like a lightning bolt. Zeth was operating in secret, without permission from the Zephyrian government. He'd stolen military equipment and gone rogue, which meant he couldn't risk exposing himself to Earth's authorities or his own superiors. He needed to work in the shadows, using humans as his tools. "You're brilliant, sweetheart," Lisa whispered, hugging Rachel tight. "He's not as powerful as he wants us to think." Over the next 2 days, the family worked together to build their defense. David used his connections throughout Pine Valley to create an information network. He reached out to every business owner, teacher, and parent who had been affected by the criminal organization's activities. Soon, they had eyes and ears all over town, reporting any suspicious activity. Lisa began reaching out through old communication channels to contacts on her home planet. What she learned gave her hope. Her exile had made her a symbol of resistance among Zephyrians who opposed the king's harsh rule. More importantly, she discovered that Commander Zeth was officially listed as a deserter. His obsessive hunt for her had led him to steal military equipment and abandon his post. Meanwhile, Rachel proved to be their secret weapon. Her innocent questions and sharp observations helped them understand Zeth's limitations. She noticed that the shadow man from her dreams only appeared during certain times of day, suggesting his surveillance equipment had restrictions. She also pointed out that the enhanced criminals never operated during heavy storms, which gave Lisa an important clue about their technology's weaknesses. David taught both Lisa and Rachel basic safety protocols. They established secret signals and safe meeting places around town. More importantly, he gave Lisa a special communicator he built from radio parts that would allow her to call for help instantly. No matter where she was, Lisa began training her family to recognize signs of Zeth's technology. The alien devices created specific electromagnetic signatures that made the air feel heavy and caused electronic devices to malfunction in predictable ways. She taught them to trust their instincts. If something felt wrong, it probably was. But Lisa wasn't just playing defense. She started fighting back strategically, using her weather powers to dismantle the criminal organization's operations piece by piece. When they tried to rob the bank, a sudden fog made it impossible for them to see. When they attempted to threaten the mayor, a perfectly timed thunderstorm drove them away. Each successful counterattack made Zeth more desperate and more dangerous. His enhanced criminals began carrying more advanced weapons and operating with increasing brutality. The people of Pine Valley, who had initially been grateful for the mysterious weather events that protected them, began to sense that something much larger and more frightening was happening. The breaking point came when Zeth realized that Lisa would never return willingly, and that she'd grown far stronger during her time on Earth than he'd anticipated. His love had completely transformed into hatred, and his plan shifted from capture to punishment. On the morning of the 3rd day, David was at school preparing for his classes when the fire alarm suddenly went off as he evacuated his students. He noticed something terrifying. The alarm wasn't responding to smoke or heat. It was being triggered by some kind of electromagnetic interference that made all the school's electronic systems go haywire. Looking up at the sky, David saw clouds forming in patterns that definitely weren't natural. They swirled and twisted in geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Lisa hadn't created this storm. Something else was controlling the weather, and it was heading straight for Pine Valley at the weather station. Lisa's instruments were going crazy. The atmospheric readings showed impossible pressure changes and energy signatures that her equipment couldn't properly measure, she knew. Immediately, what was happening? Seth had stopped hiding and was preparing for a direct confrontation. The final challenge came in the form of an announcement that echoed across the entire town. Spoken in Zeth's voice, but amplified by alien technology until it could be heard for miles away. Princess Zera, the voice boomed from the storm clouds. Above, you have chosen poorly, since you will not return home willingly. I will bring the consequences of your exile to your new world. Face me in single combat at midnight, or watch everything you claim to love be destroyed by the storm you can never control. As if to prove his point, lightning began striking random buildings around town, not enough to cause serious damage, but enough to show that Zeth could target anywhere he chose. The message was clear. He was done playing games. Lisa looked at the unnatural storm gathering overhead and felt a fierce determination rising in her chest. Commander Zeth thought he could use her love for her family against her. He was about to learn that love didn't make her weak. It made her absolutely unstoppable. The battle began at exactly midnight on the Pine Valley High School football field. Zeth had chosen the location deliberately, the place where humans gathered. To watch ritualized competition would now witness a real war between worlds as the supernatural storm raged overhead. Lisa walked alone onto the field to face the man who had once been her childhood friend. Commander Zeth stood at the 50-yard line, no longer bothering to hide his alien nature. His uniform gleamed with advanced technology that made him faster and stronger than any normal person. Energy weapons hung from his belt, and his eyes glowed with artificial enhancements that allowed him to see in complete darkness. You look different, Zera, he called out, his voice carrying easily over the howling wind. Softer, weaker. These humans have made you forget what real power feels. Like, Lisa said nothing as she approached, round the edges of the field. She could see the people of Pine Valley taking shelter in the school building. David was there with Rachel, coordinating the evacuation effort and keeping everyone calm with his steady voice. On the emergency radio, even now, facing the most terrifying night of their lives, her husband was protecting others. I offered you everything, Zeth continued, raising his hands to command the storm's fury. A return to glory, forgiveness from your father, a chance to rule beside me. Instead, you chose to play house with these primitive creatures. Lightning crashed down around Lisa, but she didn't flinch. During her years on Earth, she'd learned something Zeth could never understand. True strength didn't come from power over others, but from love for them. Every memory of David's gentle courage, Rachel's fearless curiosity, and the townspeople she'd sworn to protect fed her abilities in ways her royal training never had. The real fight began when Zeth launched himself into the air, using anti-gravity technology to attack from above. He hurled bolts of controlled lightning and sent hailstones the size of bowling balls, crashing toward Lisa. But she was ready for him. Lisa answered with winds that could level buildings, creating a protective barrier around herself while sending counterattacks spiraling upward. When Zeth tried to blind her with sudden darkness, she responded with rain that fell upward, confusing his enhanced vision. The very sky became their battlefield, with forces of nature clashing in ways that defied every law of physics. For 20 minutes, they fought as equals. Zeth's stolen military technology matched Lisa's natural abilities, and his years of combat training countered her instinctive understanding of weather patterns. Lightning split the night in colors that had no names, and the ground shook with thunder that could be felt for miles. But Zeth was growing frustrated. He'd expected Lisa to be weakened by her years of exile, made soft by her peaceful life among humans. Instead, she was fighting with a passion and strength he'd never seen before. Every attack he launched was met with an even more powerful defense. This is why your father exiled you, Zeth shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "You're too weak to do what's necessary. You choose sentiment over strength every time." "No," Lisa replied, her voice carrying on the wind to every corner of the town. "I'm finally strong enough to protect what really matters." The turning point came when Zeth, in his desperation and fury, made a crucial mistake. Unable to defeat Lisa directly, he turned his attention to the school building where the townspeople were sheltering. If he couldn't force her to surrender, he would make her watch as everyone she cared about paid the price for her defiance. As Zeth dove toward the evacuation center, where David was helping elderly residents to safety, Lisa's power exploded beyond anything she'd ever achieved. The love she felt for her family, combined with her fury at seeing innocent people threatened, unlocked abilities she hadn't known she possessed. She didn't just stop Zeth, she wrapped him in a cocoon of wind and rain that held him suspended, 50 feet above the ground, completely helpless. For the first time in the fight, he looked genuinely afraid. "You can't win this way," Zeth gasped, struggling against the winds that held him captive. "Even if you defeat me, others will come. The king will never stop hunting you." Lisa looked up at her former friend, feeling more sad than angry. "Then I'll teach them what I learned here. That real power comes from protecting others, not controlling them, instead of destroying Zeth." Lisa made a choice that surprised everyone, including herself. Using techniques David had taught her about conflict resolution, she offered Zeth a chance at redemption. Through their psychic connection, she showed him what she'd discovered on Earth, that leadership meant service, that strength meant sacrifice, and that love was the most powerful force in any universe. For a moment, she thought she'd reached him. Zeth's expression softened, and she saw a glimpse of the friend he'd once been. But pride and obsession had poisoned his heart too thoroughly. With a roar of rage, Zeth broke free from her wind prison and made one final, desperate attack. But this time, he wasn't aiming for Lisa. He was targeting the school building directly, intending to bring the entire structure down on the innocent people inside. Lisa's response was purely instinctive and overwhelmingly powerful. The energy she released didn't just stop Zeth's attack. It sent a signal across space that reached all the way to her home planet. When the light faded, Zeth lay unconscious on the football field, his stolen technology sparking and broken. The supernatural storm was dissipating, leaving behind the kind of perfect, star-filled sky that had become Lisa's signature. But the most amazing sight was yet to come. Ships appeared in the night sky, not just one, but dozens. The Zephyrian High Council had received Lisa's energy signal and come to investigate. What they found wasn't the criminal princess they'd been told about, but a woman who had learned to lead through love instead of fear. The Council's message was unprecedented. They hadn't come to arrest Lisa. They'd come to ask for her help. The rebellion she'd supported years ago had grown into a full revolution, and they needed someone who understood how to govern without tyranny. Lisa's answer was immediate and clear. "My place is here, with my family, but I'll help you learn what I've learned." As dawn broke over Pine Valley, the supernatural storm was completely gone, leaving behind the most beautiful sunrise anyone had ever seen. Zeth was taken into custody by his own people, who promised he would face justice for his crimes. The official story, carefully created by David and the town council, described the incident as an unprecedented weather event. But everyone who had witnessed the battle knew they'd seen something extraordinary. A woman who had chosen love over power, family over duty, and protection over revenge. In the months that followed, Lisa became an unofficial ambassador between Earth and the reformed Zephyrian government. She helped establish peaceful contact protocols and taught leadership principles based on her experiences with David and the Pine Valley community. David returned to his classroom, now